Hola, muy buenos días y bienvenidos y bienvenidas a esta nueva edición de entrevistas que estamos realizando a speakers de Congreso Futuro en esta nueva edición de 2025, en donde respondemos un poco a la pregunta o nos hacemos la pregunta de qué humanidad queremos ser. En esta ocasión me acompaña Ola Erstad. Ola es un académico noruego especializado en educación y tecnología, profesor de la Universidad de Oslo y es reconocido por su investigación en aprendizaje digital, alfabetización mediática y el desarrollo de competencias educativas en desarrollos educativos. Thank you very much for joining me today, Ola. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you very much.
How was your experience with Congreso Futuro has been since you get here?
It's been fantastic. It's an event that I will remember for my life. It's inspirational also in the way you discuss futures.
Yeah, and many of the activities that we organize is, we try to do it in terms of how education and with educational purposes, which is technically what you're doing for a living for a while now. So how do you think people could interact more with this type of events, help us in understand education?
Well, I think Congreso Futuro as an event is very important in the way it brings together public, people, experts, politicians, policymakers to discuss together and be able to meet and discuss, because these are really important issues for the future of our societies, and education is a very important part of that.
Yeah. Well, so Congreso Futuro in the past years has taken the concept of technology and the discussion around technology to explore different outputs or different things that has happened with technology in recent years. And especially since the pandemic, education and technology has become an issue that is being discussed not only in events like this, but in many other spaces. So from your experience, what are the biggest challenges that the education system has faced with technology in the recent years?
Well, one fundamental challenge is that technology happens very fast. So the development of new technologies like artificial intelligence happens very fast, and education systems change very slow. So there is a fundamental difference in the way development happens. So that the implication is that education systems try to adapt to technology developments instead of the other way around. So education system can define what is important for us about technology, artificial intelligence, and so forth. So most aspects of education today focus more on implementation, making access to technology. Should we ban mobile technology, telephones in schools, and so forth? And for me, that is just the surface of what this is really about. We have to go deeper down into our education systems and see if they are adapted for the young generation growing up today. And I don't think it is.
You mentioned something really interesting, because I remember when I was a student, obviously there wasn't smartphones, and my teacher said, "You're never gonna bring with you a calculator, so you need to learn to do your mathematical task on your head." And now that's not the reality. It wasn't the reality even then, but you mentioned in your talk that we need to find this middle ground, and how education is not responding in the way that they should be. What do you think about, or what are your points on how education should tackle these issues?
Well, there are 2 points to that. One is about how we can take advantage of the possibilities that the technology represents, because they are fantastic resources. They are like mini calculators in mathematics, for example, or new program software in mathematics that really change how you work within mathematics. It's a good example. And technology then becomes a tool for how we bring understanding and knowledge among students. So I think it's a fantastic tool in many ways, but we have to find what kind aspects of technology is relevant for mathematics, for example. The other dimension is to understand technology itself, our self-regulation. So each student need to have better competence in the way they interact with technology. The way it is now, we surf on social media, we look for information, we are on YouTube, but it's more surfing, it's more a flow of how we interact with technology, instead of, in the educational sense, being able to reflect on information and how technology can help me as a learner to develop.
You mentioned something interesting here and also in your talk, when you talk about 30 years ago, internet was a very different place, where it was blogs and people was eager to share their knowledge and eager to share more like, I don't know the word, but it's more about the digital aspect of a book, for example, or share knowledge and how to do things, versus now that internet is different, and now the students have to discern the authenticity of the information that they are receiving. Is the educational system now being occupied with those things in their curriculum, or is just worried about other things?
Yeah, I mean, there is been a big change in the way we talk about technology and education since the 1990s onwards. At that time, when I started looking at technology and digital literacy, we talked about possibilities for access to information for everybody, all citizens, democratic participation, so everybody can have their voice and contribute to share information. We had Wikipedia that came up as a collaborative effort run by editors, but everybody shared knowledge in a collective forum. But at one point, things changed, where companies like Amazon, Facebook, Google discovered how algorithms could draw users into their technology, what is called attention economy. And that had implications also for education, in the sense that these companies saw education as a very interesting commercial market. So what we see today is a much more commercial-oriented way of using technology and coming into schools. So we have Google Classrooms, Amazon focus on education systems, Microsoft has targeting also education, but these are American, global edtech companies that are not based in our public education systems, like in Norway, which is a fundamental change. So I think both schools and teachers struggle with what this represents. For example, of personal data, that every student, each time you click on a computer, it leaves behind traces and footprints, and that is taken up by commercial companies today. So, and that is really problematic in our public education system. So I think we are in a more difficult state today, a more complex environment of technology, which demands more of education systems and teachers in orienting themselves and see how they become masters of the technology instead of the technology mastering them.
I think that's the eternal debate, right? That this sweet spot between how can we use technology in a way that could, I don't know, maybe take this idea of creativity and imagination and the uses of the tools versus this attention seeker apps, or this idea of just the learning equals play, that also many apps, like I'm thinking, I don't know, Duolingo or Elsa or whatever, the language application, that this idea of learning is fun and there's only fun. And have you, talking about applications and new technology, is there any relation between the absence in the formal school and the appearance of these technologies?
You mean absence of that?
Yeah, this Google Classroom and
Right.
this have had an impact in how
Yeah.
young people are attending to schools.
Right. Well, they have the problem with some of these apps and environments like Google Classroom and things like that. That they are internationally oriented. They're not adapted to a Norwegian classroom or a Chilean classroom. They are thinking globally in the way they do it. And they think about learning in a very simplistic way often. So it's more almost behavioristic. So you have some simple task, personalized learning. Each student performs something to be able to go on within these tools that you use. But education for me, and what I meet from many teachers, is that they want more tools that can help challenge students, that can stimulate their creativity, their thinking, their ways of working together. And there is a limitation of what we have today that can trigger those competences.
Well, it's always challenging, especially with this literacy or digital literacy that is as important in classrooms. So it's not just students, it's also the whole ecosystems, no? So what role should families and the education institution play in preparing new generations for this new digital world?
Well, I think teachers and parents are a really important group of actors in this towards their children and their students in the way they can have guidelines that can regulate, because I think both teachers and parents struggle today in finding a balance in how much should we use technology, for what purposes, what's good for my child. So parents also need to think more carefully about how they use technology within the homes. Of course, there are problematic aspects to that of a digital divide, because some families from affluent socioeconomic backgrounds, they have more technology at home. They have possibilities to sit down with their child and discuss and develop good self-regulated learning for their children, while other families don't have access to so much technology. They don't have the same possibilities to interact with their children. And I think also school and home should collaborate more in thinking about technology, because now in Norway, for example, every student have their laptops or computer in one way, and they can take it with their home. But there is no connection between parents and teachers in ways of thinking about how technology then can be used to stimulate learning, but also to have fun and entertainment, of course.
This is really interesting. We have take a break, a small break, and we're coming back to talk more about digital literacy.
Thank you.
Vamos a tomar una pausa y volvemos en un momento. Bienvenidos y bienvenidas de vuelta a esta sección de entrevistas a expositores de Congreso Futuro 2025. En esta ocasión estamos con Ola Erstad. Su trabajo ha sido clave en analizar cómo la tecnología transforma el aprendizaje y en promover enfoques innovadores para integrar habilidades digitales en educación formal y también familiar. Welcome back, Ola.
Thank you.
We were talking about, a little bit earlier, about this sweet spot in new technology and emerging technology and educational systems. And you mentioned during your talk that education systems now are under enormous pressure to perform. And also you were mentioned that educational system today is preparing students for things that haven't happened yet, and they're not sure if they're going to happen. How the educational system is preparing itself to tackle this new way of education?
That's a good question and a complex question also. So I've been working with education systems in the Nordic countries and in Europe for many years. And it's difficult to change education system because they're very complex. And we've been looking especially on the assessment systems because assessment is very important in our education system. So we need to find ways how to change the focus on testing and so forth of what knowledge and skills that young people have, and see how we can use technology to open up new possibilities for assessing the competencies of young people today. For example, if we use portfolio, where the students can show projects they've been working on, presentations they've had, and show it to the teachers or the censors and get a grade based on that. And they can take the portfolio with them to the next grade and to higher education and so forth. So build up a portfolio that can also apply for work in the future. The problem with education systems today is that it doesn't really address fundamental challenges of our times. Like in science education, you have certain content, you want the students to learn this and that. But like environmental issues, which is very high on the agenda in many countries today, education systems have to engage students much more in questioning if we are on the right path. Are our politicians doing the right thing? Almost as activism, I would say. So students can use the knowledge and skills they develop in schools with use of technology to think how they can act on their society, their community, because young people today is the future. And they also have to understand that what they do today have implications for the future. So I think we need to look at education systems as more flexible and opening up our education systems more, because students need more engagement in education. We have problems that in Norway, for example, we have increasing dropouts of students in school. They are fed up with school. Many students are demotivated for school. They don't see the purpose of school. They do school because they have to get the grade and paper. But what's the purpose of school? So we need some new understanding of what's the purpose of school. And I think schools are really important for the future, but we have to get students more engaged.
And in your opinion, is this new possibility of endless knowledge have an effect on why people or why students and children and young people are questioning why I need the school if I had the tools right here?
Yeah, that's a question I often meet with students. I can just search for information. I can just collaborate. I can use ChatGPT to help me to find the answer or things like that. But that tells me that the system is wrong in a way. So we ask for knowledge that can easily be found if you touch your computer and search for information. So the challenge, and that's why digital literacy is very important, I think, is that they have to understand and be critical to what kind of information they get access to, how they use that information to solve problems, and how they can collaborate as students much more than they do today.
There's an increasing preoccupation, let's say, on the creativity aspect of the students and how can we push students to defy limits and everything. But what about the professors that are doing this? Often we talk about the students a lot, but professors not that much. What is the next, in your opinion, the next phase in the professors' formation that could help in education systems?
I think teachers and professors are really, really important. All our research that we do in schools and classrooms show that the most important factor in succeeding in using technology and for students to gain knowledge is the competence of the teachers. I often get the question, should teachers then be very competent in using technology? Not necessarily. They should have an awareness of what kind of technology they should use. But professors and teachers are the ones who knows what the students need to learn. But they should also be aware that students are very different. Some are more creative and want to be stimulated and engaged in more creativity. Others want to learn more in a traditional way. And they should have environments that the teachers develop that can provide for students with different interests and competencies, and also to meet challenges within schools. But schools are, for me, not only about academic training, it's about social and emotional skills, which has become very important also in the later years. So OECD has highlighted this as a very future-oriented competence that we need to include in our education systems, to learn together, because school is the only place where students from different backgrounds come together to learn, and emotional aspects that many students today struggle with depressions, anxiety, stress, and so forth. So school can be an environment where they feel more safe and trust, and the role of the teacher is important in that.
It's interesting because we usually think about schools as this place of knowledge and less that a place of socialization. And I think that switch could help us to understand more about our educational system and in many ways to find out how can improve it. Especially, and I want to ask this just out of curiosity and because I don't have the data, but what about the number of students per classroom? Is this, because I know that in Chile, for example, public schools have a higher number of students, and this could impact the way that it learns. How can we find this sweet place where we can use technology, but also encourage students to think for themselves and be critical?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think we need again to think about flexibility, and the teacher should be aware of the content of learning and the content of what they want to teach. So sometimes they need the whole school class, 30 students, 40 students even, to put down their computers, listen to the teacher, and the teacher give a lecture of 30 minutes, not much more I think, because they will fall asleep, the students. But this is important that all the students get that kind of lecture and content given by the teacher. But other phases that students can use computers to go their own track in solving problems, working with content in different subject domains, and other parts they should be in groups and work on projects and collaborate around learning. So this flexibility is not so much about the size of the classroom itself. If how you think about how to organize students together to work on projects and activities.
Wow, it's definitely a new way to see technology, to see also education and how we learn. Because I think many of us that we're not learning at the formal educational system now, kind of don't know what is happening.
Exactly.
And it's really different that when we learned at school. Well, I would like to finish with the next question because you know Congreso Futuro now, the topic of the whole event is what humanity we would like to be. And I will ask you, what is the humanity you expect to we become in the future?
Well, my interest is about young people because young people is the future. They're going to clean up the mess that we have created and try to solve all the challenges that we face. And I have a belief in young people and the humanity seen through the eyes of young people. But we have to provide an education system that are more adapted to the situation of young people today. It is not. I think most young people entering school have lots of questions. They want to learn, but at a certain point, they get demotivated and so forth. So my aspect of or view for the future of humanity is that we have to take better care of young people and provide their interest and stimulate their hope for the future and ways to see how they can act on the future, on environmental issues, on social issues, and build democracies for the future. But they have to learn about this and be engaged in discussions about this. I think also ethics and creativity are two really important areas that we have to address much more upfront. So ethics means that you're a responsible human being for yourself, but also for the person next to you and the community you're living in. So try to understand better among young people about morality and ethics, and also that you are creative. You're not learning things. You can learn by getting information from technology, but it's you as an individual that take that information and build something out of it creatively that you can affect people around you in different ways.
Thank you, Ola, for this really interesting, though short interview. And we hope you enjoy your stay in Chile and your participation in Congreso Futuro.
I do. Thank you.
Y muchísimas gracias a todos y todas por acompañarnos una vez más en esta nueva entrevista para Congreso Futuro 2025 para responder a la pregunta ¿qué humanidad queremos ser? Muchas gracias y hasta luego.